In art creation, there's this super important stage called inspiration. It may totally catch the artist off guard. When inspiration strikes, everything that makes up the artist's artistic sensibilities, their personality, experiences, and interests, comes together and fuels the creation process. You know what happens when inspiration hits? An explosion of ideas and thoughts. The artist can't even control themselves. So, don't you dare disturb the artist during this magical moment. It's during this phase, when the artwork is born out of inspiration, that it becomes a true masterpiece. And once it's finally finished, the artist stares at their own creation like, wait, did I really make this? There are many things in the artwork that go beyond their original intentions, and that's what makes it a real work of art. Back in the day, I used to write poetry, you know? Man, those chemistry classes were so boring. So, I thought, why not write a poem instead? I completely zoned out in chemistry class, ended up finishing a whole lot. Because I had this itch to write some, you know? So, once class was over, I decided to show the poems to my classmates. I was hoping for some positive feedback or to really hit them with my words. I eagerly waited for their reactions. After about 5-6 of my classmates read it, I asked, so, what do you think? And you won't believe what they said, they couldn't quite get it. They thought it was too deep or something. And boy, did that make me upset. I started explaining what each part of the poem meant, what I was trying to say in one section, and what I was trying to say in another. After hearing my whole explanation, they finally said, oh, this poem is good, But deep down, I knew I had failed. My poem couldn't stand on its own without me explaining it as the author. It didn't have a life of its own, you know? That is something poets understand. Once a poem is finished, it often gets critiqued and dissected by many people, right? But here's the thing, can the poet's own interpretation of his poem be accurate? A true poet, a real one, would say this: poetry is something that can't be explained or interpreted. That's what the Dagu means, it's like trying to interpret the true essence of a poem. It's a work of art, you see. And with art, different readers will see in different things. It's all subjective, you know? But even with all varied interpretations, there's one common thread: it's a poem, and when it's good, it holds great artistic value. But what does it really say? Even the poet doesn't have all the answers. Poetry simply can't be fully explained or interpreted. In our made-up example before, the director and actor were arguing with each other. Finally, they thought, let's get the author's opinion. Let's ask him if the actor's performance is right or wrong. You know? They wanted to know what the author honestly thought, so long as he was being real and not faking it. And the author probably say, don't ask me, go watch the work again. We watched it so many times. I see you guys didn't get it, but I'm still watching it. So, what did they go back to? They went back to understanding the overall picture and context of the entire work. Only when they grasp the full understanding of the form and context can they determine the meaning importance of each character. The answer lies within the completeness and context of the work itself. So, the director would reevaluate if he really understood the form and context from the beginning. And at the same time, the actor would play the role of a director, and would think, even though I am only playing one character, I'm also a director. I need to grasp whole work. If both of them do this, they can have a discussion, and that discussion would be the right thing to do. So, how do you play the role of Shi Xiangyun? This character is not simple, you know. She has a lovable side, she's bold and confident, like one of those cool Wei Jin, 3rd to 5th century CE, intellectuals. Can you believe it? A character who belongs to that era. And she even lectures Bao Yu on economics and the art of governance. Impressive, right? Don't keep hanging around in our ladies' group, right? In the future, you will also need to interact with men outside, right? Pay more attention to the knowledge of official career and economics. But when Bao Yu hears this and gets angry and upset, he tells her to go sit with other girls and not mess up this place with her knowledge of career and economics. He completely humiliates Shi Xiangyun and doesn't give her any face. It breaks my heart because she's actually my favorite among the 12 ladies of Jinling. How could she be treated like this? It's really sad. As a director, I would think about how to guide the actor to portray Shi Xiangyun. It's a tough question. I would definitely recommend reading Dream of the Red Chamber again and understanding the relationships between the 12 ladies of Jinling and their symbolic significance. That's the key to capturing the essence of the novel and Chao Shuoqin's search for a way out. If Shi Xiangyun is truly the ideal personality imagined by Chao Shuoqin, then we would have found the way out. In the future of China, someone like Shi Xiangyun, with her ideals and character, would bring hope to the country, don't you think? Bao Yu, on the other hand, doesn't have way out and cannot represent the future of China. So what do we do? Chao Shuoqin's viewpoint is clear. The carefree and elegant personality of a Weijin intellectual is not the path for China, nor does it reflect the vitality of Chinese culture. That's the underlying message here. The Dream of the Red Chamber depicts a bunch of characters. What is the significance of these characters? You need to repeatedly examine them within the context of the whole story. These people live at the top of the social stratum at that time. There are not many of them. One is who? Bao Yu. One is who? Qin Zhong. One is Lu Xiangliang, one is Jiang Yuhan, one is Yu Shanjia. This group of people. Who would understand them? Their social reality is that of the top of the entire era, largely incomprehensible to that society. Their profound emotions with each other are incomprehensible to others. Dai Yu understands, of course Dai Yu is not with them. So there is an episode where Bao Yu gets beaten, almost beaten to death. Of course he wasn't killed. Later he was sent back to the Yihong garden, right? First Bao Chai comes to see him. How does Bao Chai see him? As soon as she sees his condition, she knows, he needs this pill. At the time of the Ming dynasty, there was a very bad thing. The court would publicly humiliate the ministers. The ministers or those who had done something wrong would be beaten with the cane. 20 cane strokes would be very severe, 40 cane strokes could possibly kill them. It is precisely for this reason that the Chinese medicine shop has invented a kind of medicine, specially for treating cane injuries. Bao Chai actually went to steal this medicine. I don't understand how that was done. When stealing this medicine, she was told, tell that person to grind it with wine at night and let him take it, so that the heat would be dispersed. This is a double-edged statement. Bao Yu actually already had toxins in his body. So it should be dispersed. That was an educator coming, a moral educator, right? Bao Chai, her first words to Bao Yu were, if you had listened to me earlier, you wouldn't have ended up in this situation today. This is also an admonishment, right? Then what was Dai Yu like when she came? She didn't have any medicine in her hands. Her 2 eyes were swollen from crying, swollen like peaches. This is a true emotional expression. Then she saw him beaten up like this and sighed, from now on, you must change. Then Bao Yu immediately told Dai Yu, don't say such things, would even gladly die for these people. To whom could Bao Yu only say such words? Dai Yu. Because Dai Yu understood, the others didn't. Bao Yu once told Lu Xianglian, I am a person trapped in a cage, without freedom, I cannot get out of the Jia family. As soon as he went out of the Jia family, Jia mother immediately brought him back, right? He said, "Have you been to Qin Zhong's grave this Qingming?" Lu Xianglian told him that he went every year and not to worry, he would never forget to pay his respects. Baoyu said okay, they were this group of people, so this group of people, there was no way out for them, there was no way out, right? So, what does this example show? To truly understand a work, we need to delve into its complete form and understand the meaning behind its themes. That's where the real essence of the work lies. We often say a work has a dual context, but where is the true content? It's not just in the surface level, but in the complete form of the work. That's the real content of the work. This way, we break away from traditional aesthetics, and no longer see the content of a work as just its subject matter facts. As Hegel said, a novel is not considered to have content just because it has a rich plot and many characters, rather, it is the insights and universal truths it imparts to us that give the work its true content. Can you believe that even Hegel talks about writing novels in his book on logic? It's pretty interesting, and what he says makes sense. Sometimes we read a novel that seems to be packed with content, with lots of twists and turns and suspense. But in the end, we just forget about it and it loses its meaning. The truth is, the content is lacking, it doesn't really inspire us. But then there are works like Dream of the Red Chamber that truly move us. It's not just about the exciting plot or the many characters. I remember this happened years and years ago. I was teaching a philosophy intro class. During break time, a classmate came up to me and said, "Hey, Professor Wang, I've been feeling really lonely lately." So I asked him, "Are you in a relationship?" And he's like, "Nah." So I told him, "How can you know what loneliness feels like if you're not in a relationship? What you're feeling is more like solitude or isolation. Remember when you were young? Your parents were both working, so they left you alone at home all day. You were by yourself, and they only came back in the evening. You felt lonely and isolated during those long days, but it's not the same as true loneliness." So, Hegel is right. He said, poets were mentors of life in the past, they are now, and they will continue to be. And life mentoring is not just limited to poets, all great works of art are also mentors of life. These examples show us that when we read a novel such as Dream of the Red Chamber, what are we really experiencing? It's just a bunch of stories. Those stories are like the building blocks, they not the actual essence of the novel itself. This concept gets even more interesting. It's called the complete contextual form of the work, which makes the entire novel a coherent world, and each element gets its true meaning. Just understanding the facts of the story isn't enough, we need to grasp overall structure that gives those facts their context. So, once this contextual form established, what does it reveal? It reveals the true existence of the work. This true existence is expressed through something called internal vision. When a work becomes true work of art, it brings the context of the story facts into this contextual form. Once that happens successfully, then the work gains a dual context. It is in this dual context that the internal vision of the work is formed. The internal vision is different from the external vision. If we just stick to context of the story facts, we're only looking at the external vision of work. Everyone can see that, right? So, let's say you read Dream of the Red Chamber, and everyone else has too. You know the characters inside out, but that doesn't mean you truly understand work. If you haven't entered into the complete contextual form and obtained that vision. When we talk about the existence of an artwork, where does it exist? It exists within its internal vision. This concept is key because it has to do with how we evaluate the value of artworks. When we judge a work of art, we know that some are better than others. But it's hard to put a number on the artistic value of a work, you know? You can't really measure it. But there are definitely differences in value. Literary prizes in the West. How often are they given out? I have no clue. Take the Nobel Prize in Literature, for example. There are so many literary works to evaluate, and we have to figure out which ones are the best. That's what evaluating a literary prize means, finding out where these works rank in terms of value. If there was no value hierarchy, then why bother with a literary prize? And honestly, we don't need to be all focused on the Nobel Prize, which is very Eurocentric. Different cultures have different values, you know? Dream of the Red Chamber would never win a Nobel Prize in literature. But Mo Yen won because his writing style, magical realism, is something that Westerners love right now. They got it, they read it, and they thought he deserved the prize. And sure, we're happy too, because it brings glory to China. But that's not the main point here, you see? When we talk about evaluating the quality of a work of art, what's the real standard? Where does the value hierarchy of different works come from? It all comes down to the inner vision they show, whether it's broad enough. Some works have an inner vision, but it's kind of narrow. So that's one way we can distinguish the artistic hierarchy, even though we can't measure it. Here's a simple example. When we listen to Tchaikovsky's 6 symphonies, we are touched, right? As Chinese people, we might find it easier to connect with Tchaikovsky's symphonies compared to those of other European composers. But we can never say that Tchaikovsky's symphonies' achievements are higher than Beethoven's or any other composer's, you know? Tchaikovsky's symphonies are successful because they have an inner vision, but it's not broad enough. When we listen to Tchaikovsky's symphonies and become familiar with them, we can generally understand what he is trying to express in each section. While his musical language isn't perfect in conveying intentions, we can figure out what he's trying to say. But with Beethoven's works, it's different. Every time we listen, it's hard to pin down what he's expressing in each section because, when you listen to Beethoven's symphonies throughout your life, from youth to middle age to old age, you will always feel like he can bring in your rich life experiences, and you won't feel limited. However, with Tchaikovsky's works, you often feel restricted, so his inner vision is not broad or deep enough. So this becomes the basis for distinguishing the value in artistic works. Without a basis, we can't discuss the value hierarchy of works. So, next time, let's talk about the important concept of vision.